Well, welcome into an all-new betting preview for this week's Memorial. I'm Rick Gaiman. That right there is Andy Lack. Andy, it is good to see you, my friend. Happy Tuesday.
Yeah, I love this event. I would say that it's probably definitely in my top 3 favorite non-majors of the year. So let's get right into it.
Yeah, and I will say, last week we did not have a show, and I had a couple people reach out. That was my fault. That was on me. We were traveling back from Rochester, and it was just an absolute nightmare and all that fun stuff. So it is good to be back into our normal routine.
Yeah, absolutely. The travel from Rochester for 2 guys like us that are West Coasters, not exactly ideal. But luckily, we have the next major is quite literally 5 minutes from where I'm sitting right now. So can't complain about too much going forward.
West Coast US Open. I'm absolutely here for that. This week, the Memorial, Jack's Place, Jack's crown jewel. And I think one of the more valuable conversations that we can have here on this show probably pertains to the changes that have been made to the golf course in the last couple of years. Specifically, if you remember watching on television, that 2020 edition, they were literally ripping up the golf course like behind the final group on Sunday. And what has happened starting with that 2021 edition that might help us better handicap this tournament?
Well, I mean, the goal for Jack was that he really wanted to. I mean, he saw Patrick Cantlay win here at 19 under par, and that really seemed to irk him. So, he added over 150 yards of length. Most of that was to the par fives. These par fives were getting destroyed. And now they play as one of the top 7 hardest sets of par fives the last 2 years on the PGA Tour. The fairways got pinched in a little bit. The bunkers got repositioned to account for, the longer driving distances. Some of those fairway bunkers that you used to be able to carry in the past, going to be a lot more difficult. They're a lot farther down in the fairways for even some of the longest hitters. Ultimately, I think that it makes this a more difficult total tee to green test, right? I mean, we used to think of Muirfield Village in the past as really like an irons and short game course. And I would add off the tee into that now as well since the renovation. I mean, the last 2 years, it has played since the renovation, it has played in the top 7 in hardest golf courses off the tee on the PGA Tour. So, I think if anything, the renovation, if we're talking about how we're handicapping this event, right, I would just give extra weight to the importance of being a great total driver of the ball as well.
Yeah, playing out of the rough is a bigger penalty than a lot of other places. So being in those fairways and also being able to hit it far, obviously not a prerequisite for success, but certainly something that goes a long way. Here's the odds board. This is Odds Checker, so you can compare, what is that, 8 different sports books and find the best odds that are available to you. And it is no surprise that we have a big 3, but maybe the third name, not the one that we've talked about as much in the last couple of months. Scotty Scheffler, 6.5 to 1 to win the Memorial. Jon Rahm, 7.5 to 1. And now a new third name emerges. Patrick Cantlay at 10 to 1 with Rory McIlroy and Xander Schauffele sitting at 14.
I don't really have a problem with Cantlay overtaking Rory as like the third guy on the odds board at this specific golf course. This is a golf course that Cantlay's won at twice. He continues to, I mean, he's driving the ball better than any player in the world outside of Scotty Scheffler. He's had an incredibly consistent season without finding the winner circle, which is, essentially a lot of what we've seen from Rory McIlroy this season, except Cantlay's still just been objectively better. The numbers are probably a little bit too short for me for all of these guys, just because I do think that there's a lot of really strong heavy hitters once you get past that 14, 15 range and kind of the, 20 to 40 range that I have a ton of interest in. But, what Scotty Scheffler's doing right now, I've tweeted about this. You talked about this in your newsletter. He's hitting the ball better than Tiger Woods kind of ever did. And that's not me saying he's better than Tiger Woods. He's certainly not as good of a putter as Tiger Woods, which is kind of exemplified by the fact that despite this quite literally historic ball striking run, he only has 2 wins to show for it, which you strike the ball like he has. I mean, if he's a neutral putter last week, he wins Colonial by 5.
Even if he loses 2 strokes putting last week, he wins.
Yeah. So, I mean, really difficult guy to fade at this point. But would you say it's just bite the bullet time and hope that he makes 2 more 5-footers next week and he probably wins?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've kind of planted my flag with Scotty Scheffler here, right? I just have been keeping an eye on these numbers. They're insane. As you mentioned, I kind of outlined how historic it is in my newsletter this week, which you can sign up for. There's a link in the description, and it's just mind-boggling, and there's very little reason to think it is not going to continue. So if I was going to pull the trigger on one of these names at the top, it would likely be Scotty. Now, to put a bow on the Patrick Cantlay conversation, you talk about, him being and having the third shortest odds at this place, which is critical because he's got 28 rounds here since 2008 at Muirfield Village. He's gaining 2.7 strokes gained per round. That's the second best combo of any golfer on any course with that many rounds in the last 15 years. So it is kind of a historic course horse situation, which has allowed him to jump up into that third spot of the odds board.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's well deserved based on, Cantlay's ball striking numbers are probably going to get a little outshadowed by Scotty's just because they haven't been quite as good as Scotty's. But if you take out a all-time historic run of ball striking from Scotty, Cantlay's really comes into the light as this guy is truly having a fairly phenomenal season in his own right. The guy that we haven't spoken about is, the guy that's won the Masters and 4 other times this year too. Yeah. And was having one of, his 3 days at the Memorial in 2021 were 3 of the best combined days of most dominant days of golf. Again, historically, right? Like, and obviously he didn't end up winning because he was forced to withdraw with the COVID situation. But, I don't think we can underestimate Rahm either. It is such a tricky situation because with the way that, they are priced right now, it's these guys are, do they win this tournament with a bunch of other heavy hitters at, now, 12-13% rate you're asking some of these guys to do. So it's the odds are definitely the odds makers are definitely understanding that these guys are in a bit of a class of their own right now.
Yeah, and then there's a pretty big gap from the guys at 14 to everybody else. It goes Victor at 20, then another gap to the 25s, which are Colin Morikawa and Taylor Hatton, and then a couple of heavy hitters here at 30-1, Jason Day and Justin Thomas. So this is, if you're going to forego the top of the board, this might be where that first click comes from.
Yeah. I think that Hovland and Morikawa are both really interesting here. I'd like to get your take on those two as well, but I took a shot on Justin Thomas at 30.
Yeah. So.
I haven't had the opportunity to bet Justin Thomas at 30, maybe ever in my life. And this feels like a rock bottom situation. Let's buy the asset at its lowest possible point.
Yeah.
I do not envision a scenario where we're looking at this in, 2 weeks time and Justin Thomas is like 40-1 at the US Open. This feels like a demarcation point in his season. I this was a guy who was a consensus top 5 player in the world uh heading into the season. I think he's 15th in the OWGR now, something like that. I know him and Morikawa are both in danger of slipping outside of the top 20 fairly soon. This is a golf course that he's performed well on before. He lost in a playoff to Morikawa at the Workday. The setup was a little bit different that week, but it's still Muirfield Village. This guy who's won at Firestone, right? Like another bentgrass, Ohio, very long golf course with a ton of long irons. This feels like the perfect get right spot on Justin Thomas. I know the numbers aren't anything near to what we're used to seeing from him. This is one of his worst iron seasons of his career and one of his worst putting seasons of his career. I just think that we've reached it's time to buy this stock at its lowest intrinsic value, and I'm going to be there for it and take my chances.
So I'm with you. And the stat profile, it's been like the narrative is much worse than the stat profile is.
Agreed.
Right. I mean, he's got a 4th place finish in Phoenix. He's got a bunch of top 20s at, elevated events. While this is statistically one of his worst, ball striking years, he's still like a stroke per round guy on approach. It's similar to Colin Morikawa, right? Which is, he clearly has his B- stuff, but his B- stuff is still pretty good. And I actually think that I lump Colin and JT kind of similar boats, right? Like neither of them can putt all that well. Neither of them are hitting it in a fashion that they would like to be hitting it right now. When I saw Colin at the PGA Championship, I kind of thought it was a lot of weak. Like if you see him firing on all cylinders, it sounds different than everybody else. The trajectory is so solid. It just feels different. And I thought it was a little wipier at Oak Hill. Like I'm much more happy to buy JT at 30 than I am Colin at 22 or 25.
Yeah, I mean it's a better number, and you're still getting a guy that won a major a year ago on a golf course where short game is incredibly, incredibly important, and you have a little bit wider fairways. So, I'm with you. I think that this is like a really good buy spot on JT. And, I think there are a number of great players as we move a little bit farther down. Terrell Hatton's doing pretty much everything that you would like to see from a player prior to a win. I mean, he's maybe been the best player statistically this season. Well, Cantlay, I'd say, but Hatton's probably in the top 5 of the best players statistically this season without a win. I think he's got something like 4 or 5 top 6s in elevated events alone. Just a lot of green on that page. I mean, this is a guy that was a little bit more inconsistent, volatile, all over the map statistically in the past. This season, he has turned into one of the best drivers of the ball in the world, like one of the most well-rounded players in terms of the fact that this is a guy that is crushing it from tee to green and also fairly consistently gains over a stroke putting per round. So I have a ton of interest in Hatton as well. And then once you get into the 30s and 40s, there's some other names that we could mention too.
Here are the best players in elevated events this year. So this is majors or elevated events. So Scotty, number 1, 2.8 strokes gained. Rahm, 2.4. Cantlay, 2.0. So there's the only 3 guys over 2 strokes gained per round. Then Terrell Hatton. So Terrell Hatton, the 4th best player in elevated events. Obviously, Cantlay and Terrell do not have a win in either. Xander rounds out the top 5, and then you get to like Wyndham Clark, who does have a victory at the Wells Fargo. He is 6th. So, yes, Terrell Hatton has been phenomenal. He's hanging. The best number you can get on him is 25-1, which is pretty short in this field, but based on the stat profile, it's fairly well deserved. And then once it's chaos after that, Andy, right? Like once you get out of the 35s into the 40s, it's a lot of names that maybe have a couple of question marks that you have to answer, like Cam Young, Hideki, Jordan Spieth, Matt Fitzpatrick, Ricky Fowler, Corey Connors, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Some interesting options in here. Seen a lot of Ricky Fowler buzz this week. I mean, this is a golf course that he's had a tremendous amount of success at in the past. He's never won this tournament, but I think he's had multiple runner-up finishes here. He's playing great golf right now as well. The sixth place finish at Colonial was his best of the year. I would still, if we're talking my favorite in this range, I would give the edge to Hideki, who has quietly had a really strong season. I know there were some injury concerns in the past. Like, I have no concerns about the health or the state of his game. We're talking about a guy now who you see on the screen right now gained over 2.5 on approach in 4 straight starts.
Right.
Still has one of the best short games in the world. And he's won at this tournament in the past. Hideki was my first bet of the week at 40-1.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have not gotten there yet on Hideki, but it's certainly a name that I have, stared at long and hard. And, do I trust Corey Connors at 45-1? I don't know. But you mentioned injuries, and I want to lump Jordan Spieth into this conversation as well. I feel like I am much lower on the scale of concern about this injury. So just to recap, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have a guy who has really never been injured, who released a cryptic statement before the PGA Championship, then drove it beautifully and hit it beautifully at Oak Hill, then played 2 rounds at the Charles Schwab, and I have not seen him shake his wrist. I have not seen him hold it. I have not seen him grimace. I have not seen any of that in 6 rounds, yet it is still like, Jordan's hurt and might WD. Like, am I missing something?
No, I think he's I was really heavy on him last week. I had really high expectations for Spieth based on what you mentioned, the ball striking performance at Oak Hill. I mean, for somebody that is not top 10 in driving distance to gain 6 strokes off the tee at Oak Hill, you have to have your driver on an absolute string.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is, like, just because Spieth doesn't have the pop off the tee as Rory, Rahm, or Scheffler, like, Spieth is like long. He's above tour average in driving distance. He's plenty long, and he's picked up more distance.
Yeah.
In some of the drive, like one of the drives he hit on 2, like Spieth is plenty long. And when the driver is firing, he's right there with a lot of the best. He's a top 10 guy in the world when the driver is firing, because we know that the iron play can still be awesome. It has been awesome at times this year. The short game has never left him. The putting, very volatile as well, comes and go. The ceiling with the putter is incredibly high. The floor can be low too. But yeah, you go from being one of the best drivers of the ball in the world for those 4 days at Oak Hill to missing the cut at a venue that you have 9 top 15 finishes in 10 years, so it's kind of a really curious case right now of what Jordan Spieth are we going to get. If I had to wager, like, what direction we are going to see him this week, I think he probably bounces back. I didn't bet him just because I have Hideki, 1 or 2 more guys we'll talk about a little bit farther down the board, Hatton and JT. But I would side on, where you're going with this one, which is that it's probably less reason for concern from a pure injury standpoint than a lot of people are making it out to be.
I believe that we have probably discussed the winner of this golf tournament already, but is it worth venturing further down this board? How far down this board, and who is enticing enough to go grab?
So the 2 names that I have the most interest in are Shane Lowry and Adam Scott. both incredibly frustrating players at time that I have a very difficult time giving up on. I am no stranger to betting either of these two golfers. Adam Scott, you look at here first. Um, he's driving the ball phenomenally well. He's had a very, very strong track record of success at the Memorial. These are the type of events that Adam Scott has performed well in, won historically, and I just don't think the guy is cooked just yet. I think that, I got him back when he was 70. I think that number has fallen off a little bit as well, but I still endorse Scott all the way down to 50. And same thing with Shane Lowry, right? Like I was high on him at Oak Hill. He performed very solidly at Oak Hill,
Right.
hit the ball great, gained strokes in all four categories, the type of stat profile you're looking for.
Yeah.
Just a horrendous putting season from Lowry, but we've seen him have a lot of success in the past on bent grass as well. So I think it's a pretty good bounce back spot for either of those two guys. That's about as far as I would go.
Yeah, so well, we can transition to matchups here but just pointing out, like, I'll get Denny McCarthy in as many matchups as I can find him, but he's 150 to 1. Actually, as short as 80, as long as 150. Interest in Harris English, interest in Ryan Fox, but that comes primarily here in the matchup market. I don't think these guys are going to win, or it's going to be a finishing position market for me. So like Ryan Fox plus 140 over KH Lee. He's got top 25s at Oak Hill and Colonial, two pretty different golf courses, and should be able to use his power and distance here around Muirfield Village at a number like that. Like that's got me interested. So this is where I'll find, a lot more positions on guys further down the board. It'll be here in these markets.
Yeah, one guy that we didn't talk about that is not, on my outright betting card, but I actually really think is going to have a good week. He's quietly been playing a lot better than his results would indicate. Remember Tom Kim? This guy was on top of the golf world, it felt like, for a moment there, but I actually really like the way that Tom Kim is hitting the ball. He just can't find a putter, and we've seen that putter go absolutely electric before. One thing that I think people miss on Muirfield Village is that because it's over 7,500 yards, they put it in the Torrey Pines Bay Hill bucket of like, you just need to be a bomber here. Whereas it's far more to me of an accuracy course off the tee than it is a distance course off the tee. The consequence of misses at Muirfield Village are far greater than a Torrey Pines or Bay Hill. You have Tom Kim matched up against a guy like Sahith Theegala, who has been spraying it off the tee, who struggles with driving accuracy, who is not driving the ball well right now at all. I'll take Tom Kim there 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, it is interesting, right? You look at this stat profile, and he's back to being a very good second shot player. He's even strokes off the tee despite not having the distance as everybody else. And yeah, this is kind of curious here, but how far away is he from gaining strokes with the putter? If the answer is not that far, then he could thrust himself into the mix here. So my list of guys, even Corey Connors, who I don't necessarily trust in the outright market, but like Corey Connors against Wyndham Clark, that one I don't love as much, but give me Connors, who's going to keep the ball in play. Talk about quietly having a great run. He wins Valero. Everybody forgets about it the second the ball drops into the cup. And then he's got two top 12s at Quail Hollow and Oak Hill, right? Like Corey Connors is playing some of the best golf of his life right now. So you'll find me as an investor in different ways there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he quietly recused himself from contention at Oak Hill, but
much appreciated. Yes.
Yeah. but listen, I mean, that's still an incredible, not to take anything away from him. Another great ball striking performance at Oak Hill. He's been putting better too, which is fairly encouraging. And even if the putter goes a little bit, the easiest aspect of Muirfield Village by far is once you get on the greens in terms of a player's ability to gain strokes. We've seen guys countless times members of Team No Putt, whether it be Hideki or Morikawa, have tons of success at Muirfield Village in the past. So I absolutely love the Connors play as well, especially like in the matchup markets where you're not really relying on him having to be the guy holding the trophy at the end of the day.
Correct. Right. Exactly. Okay. Well, we will continue this conversation, dive into the one and done options. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from Andy's podcast. Andy Lack is one of the nerdiest golf guys that I know, and I mean that as an absolute compliment. His knowledge of course architecture allows him to create some of the most actionable course previews available, and he offers up pure expertise on his own podcast, the Inside Golf Podcast. Twice a week, he offers course breakdowns, DFS, and betting strategy for every PGA Tour event, and he expands the universe by bringing on entertaining and knowledgeable guests who can offer a different viewpoint of the game that we love. Follow Inside Golf Pod on Twitter and download Inside Golf wherever you download podcasts. We are back. So I was pulling up the props market. I do not see golf props on PrizePicks yet, but you can go get ready. They've got a ton of Major League Baseball props and obviously NBA and NHL and full season NFL stuff. The code you're looking for there is Rick. There's a link in the description. It'll get you a deposit bonus, and then they'll come out with those PGA props usually here in the next couple of hours on a Tuesday. So by the time you're watching or listening to this, they might already be out. One and done, Andy. Elevated event, 3.6 mil up top for the winner. There is one guy who seems to fit most puzzles, and he is going to be the most popular selection this week. Would you like to take a wild stab at who that is going to be?
Well, I would imagine that in terms of ownership, like in terms of what guys have left, like Rory, Rahm, Cantlay, Scheffler, most people have used those guys already, I would imagine. So it's not one of those big four, is it?
It is one of them. One of them is significantly more available than everyone else.
Is that Cantlay?
It is Cantlay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cantlay.
I think a lot of people were probably specifically saving Cantlay for this week.
Correct. So you either I think we talked about it on this before. It's like you either played Cantlay before or you saved him specifically for right now. Rahm has been used basically, a ton of spots. Scotty's been used a ton of spots. Rory's been used a ton of spots. So as of right now, it looks like everybody who has not already used Patrick Cantlay is going to use Patrick Cantlay. Is about 16.5% projected on officefootballpool.com, which shows you the site-wide picks from everybody and from every pool. Then it's a pretty big gap, Andy, to Jon Rahm, which not really a big surprise there. How about this? The third most used golfer right now, Sahith, 7.8% of one and dones.
Yeah, interesting. I don't love that for the reasons that I outlined in the Tom Kim discussion.
I hate it.
Yeah, that I would prefer Sahith at a golf course where there's a little bit less of a penalty for a big miss off the tee. I'm super high on Sahith. I mean, I think he has a really good chance to win this season. I kind of had him more penciled in for, I hope he decides to play a Rocket Mortgage or a John Deere and pick one of those off as his first wins, because I think he's far more. I mean, I think he'll probably be live at TPC River Highlands again too. I think there are other better spots for Sahith than this one. Again, like if we're talking going a little bit farther down the board because of the dearth of options, if you've used a lot of guys already, give me Shane Lowry, give me Adam Scott, give me Hideki Matsuyama, even give me Ricky.
Yeah.
Give me all those guys ahead of Sahith.
Yeah, if I'm chasing, so if you're front running and you have Patrick Cantlay available, plug him in, have fun, enjoy.
Right.
After that, if you are chasing, yeah, I don't mind, like Ricky, 3% owned. Corey Connors, even we kind of talked about him a little bit, 5% owned. Where's Justin Thomas? 4%.
Like that. Where's Hideki? Just out of curiosity.
3.5, the 12th most owned.
Yep.
I'm just trying to see how far I would really Jordan Spieth, 1%. It's tough. It's tough to play like a Sahith with no wins in a $3.6 million first place situation, right? I think there's going to be not only better spots for him, but just like better purses for him. And then if I can get a top 10 out of Ricky, I'd be thrilled. A top 10 out of Adam Scott, I'd be thrilled. Where do we stand on Matt Fitzpatrick?
I like his driving ability on this golf course. And he has contended here in the past. The ROM year, I think he finished top 5 as well. I think he gained like 8 strokes putting that week, but I like him as like a one and done option or potential DraftKings play because I don't think he will be super popular this week. Not going to make my betting card though.
Yeah. Okay. Our one and done. So the last time that we entered picks was the PGA Championship. I had Xander. You had John Rahm. Rahm got 37,625. Xander got 214,400. So I'm at 8.7. You're at 3.7.
Really, I mean, when you're getting T51s out of John Rahm,
It's not
just
good.
really indicative of the season I've had in our one and done. There's 2 majors and 4 or 5 elevated events left,
Yeah.
but it's nut cracking time. It's time to get really busy for me. I know who I'm picking, but I will let you take the reins and lead us off.
This one doesn't matter because the guy that I'm picking you have already used. So it's Patrick Cantlay.
You have him left?
Of course I do.
Was this you saved him specifically for this week?
I saved him specifically for this week or a playoff event. That's basically, he has been great in the playoff. Like he's surprisingly like kind of like a big game hunter type of deal. I know his major championship record is not good, but like these bigger elevated events and the playoffs. So yes, this was probably the first time I would have considered using Cantlay, and I'm just going to use him.
Do you have 2 big names left for the 2 final majors?
I will have to play live guys.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to take Hideki. Haven't used him yet. Think it's a good chaser spot. Cantlay terrifies me. And I have the utmost respect for him this week and at this golf course. But I have a couple big names left. I'm probably lower on the live guys at the majors going forward. So, I was I was kind of close on Xander here, who I still have left. And I think I'm going to play Xander at LACC. So let's roll the dice with Hideki.
Yeah, I agree with you. I liked the live guys better the first 2 majors, but
yeah,
I think just the value of not having to burn someone else is too much to overlook. So I will likely end up having to play, I don't know, maybe it's Cam Smith at the Open, maybe I actually have Brooks available, maybe it's Brooks at the US Open. I don't know. That's kind of I'm kind of pigeonholed into that, I believe.
Have you used DJ yet?
Yeah, I used him at the Masters, 50,000.
Interesting. So you still have Brooks and Cam Smith though?
Correct.
Yeah. I have all 3, I believe, as well. So we shall see. But yeah, I needed Hideki. Give me something. Give me something.
All right. Beautiful. Well, this week's Memorial kicks off Thursday morning. We will go to Canada next week. And before you know it, it will be US Open week at LACC. So this is all happening very, very quickly. You can follow Andy on Twitter at ADPLackSports, and he's got his great written articles on RickRunGood.com right now, with more coming later in the week. Of course, follow me on Twitter at RickRunGood. This has been your betting preview for this week's Memorial. Good luck.